Okay, we come to the last example for this section of videos. This again looks remarkably similar to a circle, and if it had said x squared plus y squared equals 35, then it would be a circle. But that minus changes everything. You don't really need to know this, but what we're getting here is, you can think of it as an exploded circle. We're getting a curve on a graph that does that. It's a hyperbola. It's a little bit like y equals 1 over x. It's related to that, but more complicated. So we're looking to see where this straight line intersects this curve, this hyperbola. Once again, this is too complicated to try and rearrange. This is definitely the one to start with. And because, as I've said before, I don't really want a fraction, if I try and make x the subject, I'm going to get a denominator of 4. Don't like that very much. I'm going to make y the subject. We'll take 4x from each side. Y equals 25 minus 4x. And so therefore it follows that x squared minus y squared equals 35. Now this is where people tie themselves up in knots, and it comes down to this negative. We need to remember that this negative actually means negative 1. We have negative 1 multiplying a bracket and then another bracket. There's a product of 3 items here. As we start to work this through, x squared minus, do not try to expand both brackets and the negative all in one go. If you do, it's almost bound to go wrong. Keep a big bracket around the result of the two smaller brackets. 25 times 25 is 625. Minus 100x minus another 100x, so minus 200x, plus negative times negative makes a positive, plus 16x squared. Now that we've sorted out the double bracket, now we can think about this negative 1, which is multiplying all of that. We get minus 625 plus 200x minus 16x squared, still equal to 35. Simplify the left-hand side. We've got negative 15x squared plus 200x. And I think while I'm at it, I'll subtract 35 from there and 35 from there, so that I get the equals 0 that I know I need. Negative 65, take that, makes negative 660. So as we've had in previous situations, we have a quadratic that we need to solve. However, it has this negative on the front. That's more awkward than it needs to be. I'm also noticing these numbers are quite large. If there is a common factor in all of these, then I could do something with that. All of these are divisible by at least 5. So what I think I'll do is I shall factorize it like that. 3x squared minus 40x, just double check, negative times negative makes positive, 5 times 40 makes 200, that's working. Negative times something makes a negative, that needs to be a plus. 660 divided by 5, that's going to be 132. Gets me to there. Three doesn't go into 40, so immediately this doesn't factorize any further. That 5 was the highest common factor. Now, negative 5 multiplied by something equals naught. It follows that the bracket is also naught. Or I could argue divide both sides by -5, and 0 divided by -5 does make 0. Either way, 3x squared minus 40x plus 132 equals 0. Still not that pleasant, but much, much better than what I had there. Does it factorise? Let's find out. Once again, I'm going to work out b squared, so negative 40 squared, take 4 times a times c, and as we've seen before, if this makes a square number, then it factorises. It makes 16. Okay, it does factorise. Perhaps just for completeness sake though, we've seen completing the square, we've seen factorising. Let's just emphasise how to use the quadratic formula, even though here it's probably not the best choice. Write out the quadratic formula in full. X equals 2 times, now then, let's just be clear. A is 3, B is negative 40, and C is 132. So the denominator, 2 times A, 2 times 3. In the numerator, negative B, but B is negative 40. Those negatives work together to produce positive 40 there. Plus or minus the square root of negative 40 squared, take 4 times A times C. X equals 40 plus or minus. Now, I put that in brackets. If you don't put it in brackets, you're going to go wrong. But perhaps it's easier just to say a negative squared or a positive squared. They both make the same thing. So I'm going to put 40 squared. We've already done this calculation really. 40 squared minus 4 times A times C gives me 16. We saw that before. This is what tells me that actually it would have factorised because that's a square number. X equals 40 plus or minus 4 over 6. And so X equals 40 plus 4 over 6. Don't know why I'm using my calculator. 22 thirds. And 40 minus 4 all over 6. 36 over 6 is exactly 6. So x equals 6, x equals 22 thirds. We now bring this back over here. And we know from what we did at the beginning that y equals 25 minus 4x. So y equals 25 minus 4 times 22 thirds, and y equals 25 minus 4 times 6. That's easy. So y equals 1. And for this one, I'll just do it quickly. 22 thirds times 4, 25 minus that answer button gives me negative 13 thirds. So these intersect at an x value of 22 thirds pairing up with negative 13 thirds, and an x value of 6 pairing up with a y value of 1.